Okay, what the hell is a WZ-113-II? Well, if you mix and match the turret from the Object 140 with the hull from a 113, you get a simple to release cash grab of a filler premium tier 8 Chinese heavy tank, because the visual model, the vehicle model are already there, the turret and the hull, and perhaps the collision model as well, so you don't have to do too much work, like introduce a exotic premium tier 8 like the Caliban, so Object 140's turret onto a 113, and there you go, a premium tier 8. So for those who are new to the game, the 113 is a legacy tier 10 Chinese heavy tank. It was the original tier 10 Chinese heavy before the 5A, and it got pushed to the legacy collector's vehicle tab, but it is somewhat fast. It has the 122. It plays like a large medium tank in a sense, and compare this to the 113-II, it's likely the same in terms of playstyle. It's fast compared to other heavy tanks, but it doesn't have the 122 now, it has the 100, so it plays a little bit more like the 110 heavy tank, the normal tier 8 heavy for the Chinese, but it's a premium, so makes more credits, crew XP and free XP, and it's a paper tank, so nothing to talk about. Has a 100mm, similar to the Object 140, but gun performance baseline is okay. Average DPM, average accuracy, average aim time, and penetration is okay for heavy. Not that great, not that bad. So nothing to write home about. And engine power is about the same as the tier 10. So horsepower per ton ratio is it's good, but it's only 660 horsepower. So horsepower per ton ratio is about 16 or so. It's not bad for heavy, but it's more like a fat medium tank in some sense. Crew of 4 fits all the WZ-111s. And let's take a look at the main stats for a 100% crew. So 100mm gun, 0.35 accuracy, 2.3 seconds of aim time, 2000 DPM, average across the board. Pretty quick in terms of turret traverse for a heavy, but it is a medium tank's turret, so it should be. And takes about 9 seconds with a rammer to reload, so alright. But gun depression is only 4 degrees, and elevation is only 17. The Object 140 has 7 degrees of gun depression. Yup. It has more gun depression in a smaller hull, or yeah, more cramped of a crew compartment than the heavy tank, quote unquote. So that's fun, but balanced stats, I guess. It has to be balanced. Now let's take a look at the main shells. So it's AP for the normal shell, and APCR for the gold shell. Gold shell is 265, which is not bad, but not that great. Compared to something like the Renegade, you have about 10 more millimeters of pin, which is not bad. Shooting while moving is average, so it's not bad as the WZ-114, as we saw yesterday. That thing has 0.33, which is horrendous. But it does have the same cleft raised engine deck in the back, so you only have 2 degrees of gun depression in the back, which is kind of bad, but you do carry 60 rounds of the 100mm, so good enough to spam, and potential damage is kind of high, which is great. So firepower wise, it's okay, decent. It's I mean, you should pen most of the time against weak spots, but sometimes you have to use gold, so it's workable. I mean, it's not like the WZ-111s where you have to spam gold shell with 250mm of pin for the high explosive anti-tank rounds. Otherwise, you won't pin with the 190 or so. Is it 190? They buffed it. They should buff it. WZ-111 196 now. Originally, it was 175 for the D25T 122. So, classic Russian gun with classically bad penetration at tier 8. But they buffed it to 196 compared to 175. So it's been a while, but these two have preferential matchmaking for the 112 and the WZ-111 baseline, as well as the Alpine Tiger. So, alright, so penetration, decent for the matchmaking, I guess, but it should be noted that this thing is fast with some sort of armor. So let's take a look at the armor. Health, average, the same hull armor as a 113, so 120 at the front, 120 at the sides, which is pretty good, since the 120 at the sides is very good for a heavy tank while having speed. So side scrape is very good. Upper plate will bounce most of the shots. Side scraping with 90mm, as well as, oh, it's only 90 above the tracks? That sucks. Where the hell is the 120? Did it lie to me about the 120 for the side armor? You sons of bitches, it's only 120 for a very small strip above the side skirts. That's the only 120, but it is sloped. So, I mean, you do have the side skirts, which are 20mm. You also have the tracks, which are 20mm. So, still pretty decent. And it's a slope shape too. It's sloped downwards a little bit. So, yeah, it's a tier 10 heavy tanks hull. It's like the Object 252U with the IS-7's hull on a tier 8 practically. So not bad. But lower plate without sloping is 180-ish, 170-ish. So yeah, upper plate is about 240 to 260, which is pretty good for a tier 8. That is pretty good. Downside is the turret is a Object 140's turret, so you do have the gigantic commander cupola right here, and that is actually, that's the commander cupola. That's a loader cupola. I'm mixing it around. That should be the loader cupola. And getting shot here means a dead loader, so a cut to your DPM unless you have the med kit. But what I found out from playing the Object 140 is you have to wiggle the turret a lot. That helps out with the shots, and don't be too close. But it's a decent enough turret considering that all Chinese heavy tanks have large cupolas and large turrets. So yeah, it's okay. Hull roof is 40mm, so a little bit better than the 30s against artillery shells, and shot trapping is not that big of a deal since there are no cheeks or prominent protrusions on the machine gun mounts, the coax and stuff, or the periscopes. So shot trapping is pretty hard for this vehicle, which is great, but sometimes the vehicles are too tall and they just aim downwards into the large uneven spacing for the turret with the hull. So obviously for such a big hull, usually the turret is also large and covers up a lot of the hull roof. It's not the case over here, so you get overmatched with something like a E100 face hugging you, and they jam shots into your turret roof and into your hull roof because they're tall and big. But otherwise, armor is decent, and this is in combination with the speed of this vehicle. So let's take a look at the speed. But repair track speed, average, so nothing to write home about. But the important thing with the combo is the speed of this vehicle is not bad compared with the armor. So both are in combo, and this thing will be more of a medium tank than a heavy tank. So taking a look, 40 tons, that's practically a medium. 660 horsepower per ton ratio is 16, so not bad. And top speed of 50, pretty good. Reverse of 15, pretty good too. Hull traverse 34.4, also pretty good for heavy. So this is practically a medium tank. It's like the Renegade. If you know the American heavy tank, quote unquote, it should be a medium, but yeah, it's a heavy. So this thing is relatively quick to move about. And let's take a look at the terrain resistance just to be sure. Yeah, not bad. It's a little bit better than the Renegade. Renegade has like 3 or something for terrain resistance. Let's take a look. Renegade. I mean, it's not a Chrysler K in terms of horsepower, but where the hell's the T54 Renegade? There it is. Save. So it has better terrain resistance than the Renegade. And the horsepower per turn ratio is not as bad as the Renegade. Or not as, well, it's not as good, but not that bad compared to the Renegade. Top speed is a little bit better, but doesn't have the pen, doesn't have the alpha, doesn't have the DPM. That's the only downside. And the dispersion factors, as well as the gun depression. Gun depression sucks ass. So it's relatively quick of a heavy tank, just not as good in terms of gun performance. But this thing has, I think, more reliable armor than the Renegade. So that's the trade-off. Renegade has okay-ish pattern armor, I guess. But this thing has a Object 140's armor. So give or take. But alright, I mean, it's okay. So concealment, heavy tank, garbage. Spotting, 380. Okay for a Chinese heavy. So it's not the 400 on the Renegade, but it's not bad. So overall, how much would I give this thing? It's not bad of a heavy. It's more of a medium heavy. The only downside I could think of is the gun depression. The 4 degrees might be somewhat uncomfortable to most players because the 5 degrees on the WZ-111s are already pretty tough to handle with. And if you play something like the WZ-120, oh my god, that thing has only like 3 degrees of gun depression, which is garbage. So that's the only turn-off point that I could think of for this vehicle. Maybe the gold cost as well. Gold cost is a little bit more than the Renegade. Renegade costs only 9,000 gold for Advent Calendar, which I got, and it's pretty good. For 9,000 gold, that's like 3,000 cheaper than a T-34 heavy tank. Let's see, T-34... yeah. Close. I thought it was 12,000. So it's cheaper. So Renegade has all the benefits of the cost efficiency in terms of gold, but otherwise the stats of this vehicle is relatively decent if you know how to play it well, and if you know how to side scrape and quickly move about without sticking to a corner by yourself. So I would rate it about 6 out of 10, maybe 6.5 out of 10. I mean, it's a little bit above average if you know what you're doing. It could be compensated by shooting all gold shells, but yeah, I mean, if this thing has the T-62A's turret, it'll be a little bit more effective, since that thing doesn't have the cupola, the loader cupola, such big cupola on the starboard side of the vehicle. So let's see, T-62A. So the T-62A loader cupola is a lot smaller than the commander cupola. So that's why, and the commander cupola is also pretty thick too. So it's pretty hard to go through this thing's armor. See, it's a very small strip, and that strip is 250. If you have this turret on the WZ-113-II, it's a very good vehicle. It will be like 7.5 out of 10. It might be even 8, just because how thick it is to penetrate. It's like the Object 252U in a sense, a tier 10's hull on a tier 8 heavy tank, and that's why you don't see that much selling of the Object 140 on Object 252Us in terms of events. So it's IS-7's hull with IS-5 or IS-6's turret practically ish. So IS-6's turret, yeah, it has a small lip, and that's where you penetrate. Otherwise, the hull is great. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10. It's not a bad heavy tank, and I think it's better than WZ-111s. So yeah, WZ-111s could use a better crew trainer than the baseline Chinese heavy tanks with preferential matchmaking. So it's been a while. It's been long, unless you want to play with the 114-II that we saw, or just 114. It's not the 114-II that we saw yesterday. So yeah, garbage accuracy, long ass aim time, penetration is below average, but it punches hard. So if you're top tier against tier 6s, yay! But otherwise, you cry to yourself in tier 9s mostly. And compared to the 113, the 113 has better accuracy, Let's see if it has better accuracy or better DPM, just to be sure. So tier 8 Chinese heavy tank. China. Configure without the rammer and crew skills. Usually I think you just need a rammer, vertical stabilizer and vents with these assault heavy tanks. These are not breakthrough, so they don't play like Object 705s or STIs, so don't expect them to be a super heavy. So play them more like a medium tank, but accuracy is actually about the same, surprisingly. But aim time is better. DPM is about the same. The DPM is actually the same, but the 110 has better gun depression at the cost of elevation. However, the 113-II turns faster in terms of the turret and in terms of the hull, so it's more mobile too, with better horsepower per turn ratio and better top speed. Better view range? Same view range. Alright. Surprising too. And the 110 weighs more. So it has less weight and more engine power. That's why horsepower per turn ratio is so good on the 113-II compared to the 110. Well, if you like the 110, you probably will like the 113-II. I like my 110. I do pretty well in it. And, well, the 𝘏𝘺 is somewhat bigger on the 113-II. So, give or take, it's actually not that bad. So with the rammer, with the crew, you could go up to 2300 DPM. Downside is the gun depression. That's the biggest downside. So I will still give it a 6.5 out of 10. It has more reliable armor in terms of the hull compared to the 110, and it's a little bit faster. It's actually a lot faster. So a quick take a look at the terrain resistance just to be finally sure. Not as good terrain resistance, but you have a better horsepower per turn ratio to compensate. So, alright. Well, there you go, folks. The 113-II. It's a 6.5 out of 10. It's pretty decent. It doesn't go overboard in terms of the gun power, but the hull makes up for it as well as the speed. So it is quite maneuverable in quite of a medium tank than a heavy. So make sure you put that into your perspective. Make sure you are wary about the gun depression. And that's practically it. So mixing and matching turrets, it's not a new trick for wargaming, but hey, it's not that bad. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.